Hi, you are watching SightsIn Plus, and this is Romesh Shivast. Please to subscribe the channel for the HR news, for HR updates, and conversation with the top-notch CHROs, thought leaders, and business heads. Today, we are going to dive deep Donald Trump 2.0 and impact on the US jobs for the Indian. In last regime, we have seen that Donald Trump in 2020 he has tightened the immigration policy, especially for the H-1B visas, and that has impacted into 84.5% only approval of H-1B visa. If you look at the user cases, so India has the highest use of H-1B visa. In 2023, I have the data, and according to this data, 72.3% of total approved visas, H-1B visas, were used by the Indians. If you look at the numbers, around 2.79 lakh visas were used by the Indian people out of total approved visa 3.86 lakh. So it is a good number, and it may impact also the economy of India and US both. Joining us, Mr. Milind Mutalik is former Chief People Officer, Accolite Digital, and Ms. Usha Chirayil is a Senior Director, Human Resources at Reflections Info Systems. Welcome, both of you, to SightsIn Plus. Milind, first, I would like to know your initial comment on this, that how do you see the second term of Donald Trump impact, for the US job for the Indians, and how do you see the immigration policy changes?
All right, thanks. I think the topic which you have picked up is definitely very relevant topic to the changes which are happening around in the business and for the whole world. One of the very important thing which has been there post this president election is how overall impact will happen on the global economy. And one of the very important thing which we or the phase we were passing through was about the so-called US economy not doing so well. Now, one of the focus the president is going to have is of making the economy strong. And for that, whatever is required, I think 7 point agenda or something which Mr. Trump talked about, President Trump talked about, which has one of them, which is immigration. But if you go into the sub point of it, it is more of an illegal immigration. And that's something which is really haunting US much more than we talk about the knowledge economy immigration, or for that matter, the immigration for the people who are supposed to work there in a technology and other areas. So that's a broad comment. Rest of the issues which are typically more towards US economy of starting a manufacturing there, trying to get more US jobs, and that being a reason immigration would impact. And now coming to how is that Indians working, or what kind of a number which Indians population is in US. And as per the data which I have seen, India population is roughly in the range of 1.56%, or something like over a 34 crore 54 lakh population of US is 5.4 million is something which India population works there. You just narrated some of the numbers on H-1B visa, 2,70,000 or whatever, 3 lakhs roughly. And if you look at how is the H1 works, okay, is it has got a validity of 3 years, and then you can get 3 years extension. What does that goes to say is that anybody who's going there, 3 to 4 years working is easy or continued. But post that is the issue, because either you get an extension for 3 years, and also at the same time you have to apply for the green card, because the rest of the two types of visas, L1 visa or B1 visa, are all for a temporary work. Rest of them are student visas. So coming to who is able to work, the ones who've gone with H1, okay, and their spouses or dependents who are there, they are able to work there based on again dependent visa. In my experience, even earlier organization where I worked, where US force was quite big in number, our biggest issue was extension of visas. Okay. And that is going to, I think this time is going to be more stricter. One more, kind of number to talk about is about 1.2 million, that is 12 lakh. Okay. green cards are pending for a Indian, I would say, employees or Indian population in US. There's also a restriction that how much green cards you can approve as per the US law or the US law which was passed earlier. It could be 8, 10,000 or roughly about 8,000 per annum. And the pending of 12 lakhs itself shows that there's a big backlog. And this is one of the challenge which I feel is going to come in. If I look at going on your statistics of on an average 3 lakhs per annum, that means there are already about 9 lakh people who are on the verge of either extension or on the verge of kind of going to go for a green card. So I think this in between of 3 to 4 lakhs people are going to be impacted with the extension. If it goes in the right way, we will have very smooth sailing. Otherwise, we are going to definitely have an issue. So my point is, how does the immigration turns based on that, and how many extensions? The way you said the H1 approvals were reduced during last term. The same way, if the extension has been not been done so fast, then we'll have people to come back into India, and that's going to be one of the impact which I feel.
If we look at the changes, that what the changes they have suggested, so one, there was also the increase in compensation. If you're hiring anyone, the foreign employee, means if you're hiring the Indian people, then there will be 40% to 100% even high salary than the person who is born in US. This is the one. Second, there was also 7% rate was increased for the registration. So earlier it was $10 and then it was increased to $215. So this is another change. So based on these changes, Usha, what is your initial comment on this?
I think one also needs to look at the reasons why a US company or an India-based company would be sending people on H-1B visas. The fact that there is a shortage of technical skill locally available is also one key ingredient. So while there could be changes in visa rules, which will try to reduce the number of people going there or try to make it that much more costly for companies to attempt to take skilled talent from India, I still think that the basic reason, which is the shortage of specialized talent in the latest air tech areas, which will continue to drop some amount of demand for Indian technical talent. So if there are generic skills, I'm sure they can hire locally, which some of the large Indian players themselves have been doing. But if there are latest tech areas, be it in cloud, be it in AI, or be it the sheer engineering talent, which needs architect level skills, that will continue to be a reason why both the large American companies as well as Indian tech companies will continue to use the H-1B throughout. Yes, there is a period of uncertainty when we're not sure what kind of restrictions will come to prop up the American economy. But if you look at a longer term view, the fact that for them to do well, they need our talent, there could be a bit of moderation in approach, is my guess about the situation.
So if you look at the companies generally, so most of the tech and IT companies are user of H-1B visas. Maybe like Amazon, like Google, like Microsoft, TCS, Infosys, Cognizant. These are the companies generally are the user of these visas. If this restriction, this kind of strict policy continues, then Milind, what is your take on this? That how these companies are going to change their talent acquisition policies?
This has been talked earlier also that with the restriction on the H-1B approvals and others, you have to go to nearshore. And that's something which all IT companies will try and work on, either offshore or nearshore. Either work out of India and put the services, what is required to be done, because there's a restriction, or for that matter, go nearshore. And now nearshore, if you look at, Canada, now our equations are not so great with Canada. So we don't know Canada, Mexico, Brazil, Argentina. They are some of the locations, which would be looked at as a nearshore options by majority of the organizations. The reason for it is If you have to provide the services, you have a contract, you need to fulfill that. Now, doing it from India, again, there won't be a motivation to the young employees who really want to work abroad or make the career abroad. And this is going to be one of the issue from the perspective of human resource or from the perspective of organization, that if they want to say, send them overseas, it could be, maybe Canada, Mexico, or other regions nearby may fulfill some of the dreams. But finally, somebody who would like to really they want to be in USA to make their next career. So the option left out is only two. One is, near shore, or, start serving out of India, or your own locations, which are, really big in numbers.
Can this
Yeah.
also increase the trend of remote working?
See, in fact, if you look at the technology companies, the rest other than India, okay, Indian locations, Indian IT organizations are majorly today asking for people to come to office. There could be two different reasons. One is, yes, team building and other things, and the second could be the important, concessions which they are getting in, because of economic zone. Okay, if they have to continue doing that, they need to show the population coming in. Okay, so there could be mandatory reasons. There could be reasons where you really want teams to come together, camaraderie, culture, and other aspects. But if you look at the Western world, the so-called, telecommuting or work from home, work from anywhere is broadly accepted culture. Okay, and I think that from the India perspective, it's going to be a different scenario. But if you look at nearshore or other places, it would still able to work as a remote location. And if you do it from India, you have to really work with rest of the problems which you've had earlier during the pandemic of so-called multi-working and whatever names you can give it. So I think more of checks and balances would be required. But in India as a whole, you need a lot of caution on going completely on remote working, whereas in Western world it is accepted now.
And also, if you see, this is around 3 lakh. That is a big number. Not so So if the country does not allow the H-1B visa, that may also result into some kind of talent shortage. How do you see in such a situation how the companies are going to deal with this?
Well, the immediate short term could be trying to resort to hiring and then also to training. I've heard that there is efforts even by NASSCOM to upskill tech talent in the US. So that gives an additional avenue for employment for both training and development of those rare tech skills. I'm sure it's when there is a situation of extreme shortage that other options and other avenues will open up, including training and development and rotations and possibly shorter term visas. But to an extent, I don't think this can be fulfilled by remote working because there are reports of even the US companies requesting their employees to come back to office and work. Now, in such situations, there will still be a strong demand for people to be present physically, especially in some stages of projects which include interactions with clients or trying to develop certain aspects through brainstorming and other topics. So we've had recently somebody traveling in a particular stage of a project, which cannot be done, no justice can be done by working remotely. So the need continues to be there for in-person assignments. Companies might get more innovative on how they do that, either by training locally available talent or using shorter term visas and rotating them out, things like that. Now, it all comes down to when will this change be effected and for how long. I've heard one report which said that, in fact, the H-1B route is being used more by the American-based companies than the India-based, the big fives of India. I've seen a statistic which said that since 2016, there has been a 189% hike in the H-1B usage of companies like Google, Microsoft, and others, whereas the Indian TCS, Infosys, etc. Numbers have gone down by 56% because they're using other options. Either they use American talent, local talent by hiring them, or they use green card options. So there are multiple options that can be considered should there be a situation when the H-1B route is no longer used by the majority.
So true. Absolutely. The skilling that will also, companies will focus also on the skilling part and short-term visas also. Milind, last time we have a discussion on the Q2 results of these Indian IT companies. So, these are on the revival stage as of now. And if you see the North America project, so yeah, that is also open, and these companies are getting the project from the North America as well. In such a scenario, if this H1 visa is going to be expensive in terms of the salary, in terms of registration and visa, how it is going to impact the revival of these companies? Is it going to impact on these companies as well?
One of the thing which I would say, I'll go two steps back and say, I think with positive so-called thing in the market, there'll be a fund release which will start. I think that would benefit all the Indian IT organizations, especially if it is into banking and financial services. As I made a mention, there are about 38-40% of our content of revenue comes on a BFSI. Now, if that happens and there are restrictions of either the higher salaries or for that matter, some of the restrictions, I think we'll have to find the ways of looking at the rates again in particular piece of delivery where we may look at revising the rate upwards to maintain our bottom line and to maintain the competitiveness. Second, while we are discussing that there could be a kind of a reduction in the H1s and all, the repercussions are well known to the US economy too. Like Usha ma'am pointed out that why are you doing it first of all? Because you are having a skill shortage. And if you're not able to fulfill some of the things, then you're going to have an impact of it even in the US economy. So you need to have a balancing aspect coming up both the ways. Either if you have, as you rightly said, the rates are very high. The amount of so-called the salaries which are being fixed by USCIS for last 2-3 years, they have really jumped from an average of whatever 80-85K, it has jumped to 130-150K. And that being a reason, majority of the companies which are out of US are able to hire. When you look at Indian organizations, I have seen in my experience, all the US staff or my US revenue versus the margin is much lower as compared to India offshore margin. So when we are doing US bet or we are sending the people into US, we are ready to do a particular part of the project there. It is by compulsion rather than the option. Okay. And that being a reason to balance this out, if we have to grow, we'll have to ask for what is needed in terms of either rates or terms of approvals which are required. And there we need a good amount of support coming out of our clients who are sitting out of US. I think that iteration will start as soon as you see the clamp is coming onto extensions or clamp is coming onto the H-1B approvals, etc. Yeah, because the next move will come now in March 2025 or April 2025. The next H1 will open. 24 is over, and we again, as you rightly pointed out, about 72-75% of approvals are coming out for the India, and we are the one who are using the maximum because we are in demand over there from the technology point of view. One of the president agenda also talks about they want to be a superpower in technology. And that cannot be possible without the real technological talent, which is being in the mass available at one of the country, and that is India. So I think there would be a way out which will come in rather than it's going to be one way because everybody understands this need, the factors or dynamism which is required. That's been well understood. So either rate hike or clients forcing on to see what is the way out by which they are able to do at least a knowledge transition, call the folks for 4 months, 6 months, and get the KT done and do the projects offshore. I think way outs will come up, but this is definitely one of the scenario which many of them are planning as to what needs to be done.
We have been able to discuss all the important points related to this H1B and L1 visa. Usha, what is your final comment on this? How do you see it is going to impact the Indian IT companies, tech companies? as if the strict policy continues for the immigration.
Right. If at all there were to be some significant changes, in the short term, it could have an impact. I think in the longer term, people will find a workaround, either by, like Milind mentioned, either a workaround in terms of increased rates or by going near shore, or perhaps using other categories of visa to process the same need that exists, which is of highly skilled Indian tech talent. So short term, we would need to wait and watch and see when exactly changes come up and in what form. And I'm sure the Indian IT companies, which have been used to this for so long, will find a workaround to make sure that their profits as well as the overall skilling topic is handled well.
Milind, any of your final comments?
Yes, yes, yes. See, one of the thing, one more channel which is available is students. I think a lot of Indian students too are going for a technical education into US. I think maybe, using them would be one more option which would be used by the organizations. And as rightly pointed out by Usha ma'am, that training would work out here much better. Okay. And I'm sure those who do, technical education over there are having a better speed and able to cope up with the environment there and would able to be useful. But I was, listening on a LinkedIn to Professor Ram Charan, who is, like kind of authority to talk about the whole of aspects on this. And he says US economies wants to go strong, okay, and then they are looking at, new America, and they are looking at the national security, immigration, reduce dependence on some of the other countries like China. And further, if you look at it, they want to be having a stronger allies where they are able to rely on to. And under this scenario, he said every CEO need to work out a scenario planning as to what is, if this happens, then what's going to be the plan? If that happens, what's going to be the plan? I think everybody has to start getting back into looking at how this is going to change. And one more comment which he gave was very interesting. He said, it's still not completely announced who is going to be Secretary of Territory, Head of National Security, and Secretary of State, Secretary of Defense. I think these are the four individuals who would also drive a lot of strategy as to what change is going to come in to make America what they're expecting to do as the new America as being announced or being expected by the people who elected the president. That's kind of a scenario, or that's kind of a status I feel would be the next move as a whole.
So finally, if I would like to say, so the companies, IT companies have already seen this kind of the scenario earlier. So they have been started hiring the local people, and second, as suggested by the panelists like Shabam, that maybe the skilling that will be in trend. Some student visa, maybe that may also work, as Mr. Milind has said. So not a major impact, not a huge impact there would be, but yeah, initially there might be some impact, and the companies will be able to manage that. Thank you so much, Mr. Milind and Ms. Usha, for joining the conversation and sharing your wonderful thoughts. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.